Hi and welcome to CrewConnect TV. Today we're here with Mike Powell, founder of
Cardinal Point Marine.
Hi. Mike, so
Hi,
nice to have you here. So yesterday you were chairing one of the streams here at CrewConnect Global on competency and safety at sea. I know that there has been a lot of talk about digital technologies helping or improving safety at sea. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting because, of course, in some contexts we talk about digitalisation like it's something that's recent, but actually in terms of maritime education and training delivery, that's been going on for quite some time. I mean, when I started training, which was a few decades ago, we moved around with little ships, wooden ships on tables, and now we have computer-based training. So they started with software packages on ships to make, and some of those companies are represented here, and they've got quite a legacy of delivering digital solutions for training. And the other big change where digitalization's had a massive impact is on simulation, and that's going to make a huge difference to the way we go forward with training. And you've seen a lot at this conference about the standards of training and certification and watchkeeping and how they need to change. And one of those changes will be facilitated by the access to simulation and virtual reality environments where seafarers can probably experience in several days scenarios that they wouldn't see in several years of actually sailing, so particularly safety critical items. So digitalization is already there in this context, and it should lead to greater competencies. But the caveat to that is that the regulations need to catch up, because quite often at the moment that access to simulation is a discretionary spend, and in an environment, a cost-driven environment, as shipping often or always is, that means you won't spend the money unless it's mandated. So the regulations need to catch up and take advantage of digitalization. It may mean, for example, that instead of qualifying a master mariner in 10 years, as it probably takes about now, 9 to 10 years, you might be able to do it in half that time or less.
So one of the biggest challenges that's coming for the industry is the 2020 sulfur cap, and since most of the world fleet will be running on some sort of alternative fuel, how do you see seafarers adapting to this challenge, since the difference in fuel might make a difference in their operations?
The sulfur cap, alternative fuels, alternative energy sources we're going to see increasingly, or additional equipment. So seafarers are already having to deal with ballast water treatment systems, which they didn't have before, and now exhaust gas cleaning systems, because one of the other alternatives, you can still burn the bad stuff, provided you clean it up after you. But that puts an extra load on seafarers. Some of the compliant fuels, we're not certain how they'll interact with the machinery and what benefit they'll confer, and the crews will need to deal with that too. So there needs to be training and preparation and change management, but there's still a great degree of uncertainty as to what that post-2020 scenario is going to look like. So the seafarers will a lot of flexibility for sure.
Just to expand on that, so the way I see it is that if you are not unsure of what's going to happen in operations, that's an additional risk to the seafarers and, just general business really. How is the industry trying to counter that?
Well, I think so. Parts of the industry have been very late to the party because of the uncertainty as to whether the compliant fuels would be available. There was also uncertainty as to whether the poor fuels would still be available, because you need to break down the long chain molecules in the residual fuel oils to deliver the compliant fuels. And so a lot of uncertainty lent to delay. Other owners took a view early on as to what they were going to do, and so they've had time to prepare. But every operator needs to constantly monitor the risks of their operation and come up with the best risk mitigation strategy. It's not down to the seafarers as such, but the ship owners should be communicating their mitigation strategy to the crews in good time, so that they know what they can expect in 2020.
Mm-hmm. A previous example of this might be, as we mentioned, the ballast water management treatment systems.
Yeah.
And with these new technologies on board, how are seafarers faring with these changes?
I think in general, seafarers are very good at adapting. We have been. I'd like to think that I did in the time that I was at sea. That we have regulations come in. There is new. I think it's rather more easy to put a single piece of equipment on board to fix a particular problem. Where we need to change culture, that's much more difficult and that takes longer. So, and I think we talk about some of the themes that we've come up in the conference, for example, about diversity and inclusion. That's a culture change. So you can't fix that by buying a new piece of kit which can be delivered onto the ship in a few months. So these things in terms of management of change are relatively simple compared with other things that the industry needs to do and accommodate.
All right. Mike, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. That was a pleasure. Ready?